Okay.
Man, we're here.
Oh, we made it, Mark.
Oh, feels good.
Starting to feel a little untamed.
In a good way.
I think we're going to probably give each other the cheers, the ching-ching.
We've done it like already, I think, 3 times. So
it's so exciting.
It is so exciting. We're here in my backyard.
Yeah.
Recording footage of you and I really sharing our heart in what it means to be untamed.
Yeah.
You and I have been in this beautiful journey of wrestling with a brand, a name, a beautiful ministry that God is leading us to and calling us to.
Honestly, a calling. Yeah, truly. A calling. A real sense of a path toward a purpose that you and I honestly share. It resonates with both of us. Adventure from very early on in our childhood. I know mine as I became an adult. It's just all I wanted to do was go on adventures. Yeah. Snowboarding, learning to surf, even though I was like Rick Kane coming out of Arizona.
Rick Kane. He gets the big belt buckle when he wins the competition at Big Surf in Tempe, Arizona. Rick Kane.
But
he was such a kook and a Holly, but I loved him.
Just always longed for the ocean, you know, and to be on those adventures. So mountains, ocean, I love. Board sports, just kind of, I fell into that because it allowed me the opportunity to be in the water. It allowed me to be on frozen H2O. That sort of a thing. So very passionate. And then you and I share that. You're a much better surfer than I am, I'm sure. We've only surfed together once or twice. But you've got such
a
rich history in that in San Diego.
I definitely love surfing for sure.
Me too.
Well, I think one of the questions that I want to hear from you as we kind of drink our coffee cups with Vancouver, what is this? Vancouver Aquarium. Why, in this moment of your life, why is God leading you to really connect with a beautiful tribe of guys all over the world that we both believe are feeling that they need to come alive? There's this awakening that we're feeling like in our own souls that God's awakening us even more.
Yeah.
But yet there's this deep desire that you and I both have to help men specifically get untamed.
Yeah.
So let's just kind of unpack for a few moments. What does it mean for a man to be untamed? And what does that look like for Joel and for Mark to become untamed?
Let's do it. You know, and if you don't mind me starting off, I'll just go ahead and answer that by sharing a little bit of my journey and recognizing that this word untamed that you and I have been kicking around and wondering, you know, does it sound, is it odd? What's the connotation? Does it really describe what we're trying to do? And coming to this moment where I think we're very close, if not 100% certain that this idea, this concept, this word really does define what we're trying to do. But from my perspective, the way I look at it is that I got this call to adventure, and there's a deeper, longer story. But even as a 19-year-old, I remember sitting down with my uncle talking about like, what would you like to do in life? And I was like, well, I'd love to be like a guide for people, you know, and take them on snowboarding trips and surfing trips. Is that a thing? Can I do that? You know, and thinking about that. And he's like, I've got a good name for that, adventure consultant. I thought, adventure consultant. And I actually went out and printed little business cards, you know.
At 19?
At 19 years old. And they said, Joel Fritz, adventure consultant.
And you're so proud of that moment, I'm sure. You know, right?
And I didn't do anything with it except continue to be adventurous. Because very quickly after, I felt a strong sense of call from the Lord into pastoral ministry. And so I just kind of threw myself headlong into that. And so all of the things that come with that, the administration of church, the administration of groups, the preaching of the word of God, all that sort of stuff. And so I went headlong in that. Now, as I look back, I see the theme just really playing itself out. What did I do? I took 12-year-olds, you know, to Peru, the Amazon jungle in Peru. And my wife and I did that and allowed these kids, their horizons to be expanded as they walked around villages in places where I think it's about 70% of the world lives without floors and without windows. But we don't understand that here. You know, like we're in such a beautiful setting and we have opportunity. There's almost nobody in America that lives without floors and without windows. Yeah. But we went and we would take these kids into those situations and we take them hygiene packets and do all these sorts of things that just really opened their minds to the reality of what the world was like. And that's how I did it, right? I took them on retreats. I took found places in the mountains. I took them on snowboard trips. All the stuff that was second nature to me. I literally just drug kids along. Overnight trips to Magic Mountain. Some of my best friends, people who were kids, 14-year-olds in the youth group, I drug them on an overnight trip and they still talk about it because we went from Tucson, Arizona to Magic Mountain overnight, red-eyed it.
Right.
Came back that night, the next night. It was just like, and they go, memories. I was more tired on that trip than I've ever been in my entire life. And I was 14 years old. But that's that kind of thing. And as you and I talk, what I realize about that is that there are few times in our lives where we feel truly vulnerable with one another, or we actually allow ourselves to open up our true hearts, what's in our heart. And when you go on a little adventure, even if it's just a short one, you go through that cycle where your heart begins to open and you start to interact with a person in a different way. You leave the ordinary, you go into kind of a new, extraordinary place. And you act different, you feel different, your mind is open, your heart is open. And as the years have gone by, let's just say it like this, as the years have gone by and the responsibilities have increased,
right.
I think what happens to us is a very simple and common thing. And that's that those priorities, those things that are so important to us that we cannot ignore, like our wives, our children, the idea of supporting them, the idea of making sure that their lives are okay, the sustaining of what we've already created just continues to take kind of the front seat. It continues to be the thing that is in focus.
Right.
And I think I've noticed, we've been on some adventures and I can't get into everything in this moment. I look forward to telling these stories, but we uprooted from our home in Phoenix where I was pastoring and we left and we went on a true adventure. We uprooted our lives and went to Italy as missionaries. And nothing's been the same since then. But when that happened, I think there was a shift in me where I stopped thinking about adventure in the same way. I stopped thinking, and I felt all the obligations of just making sure my family was okay. And I think since then, I've been making a lot of fear-based decisions. And I don't want to make fear-based decisions.
Yeah.
I want to make decisions that are true to my heart. I want to make decisions that allow my kids to see their dad in a light where he's bold and courageous. Clear, he knows where he wants to go. And I haven't felt real clear over the last 4 years. But as you and I have sat down and talked, and I've kind of been through a number of different things. I've done real estate, I've done a bunch of flips, built new houses, done things that would sustain my family, thought about how can you accumulate wealth and stability for the future. Honestly, real prudent, good things to understand and know about. There was a little bit of the flame has been gone. And so I've been starting to uncover that and look back. And I've been looked back 5 years. I've looked back 10 years. I've looked back decades, as I just began this with talking about Joel Adventure Consultant at 19. I'm 48 today.
Yeah.
Not today, but right now. I'm 48 right now. And just all those thoughts caused me to think about how and where I've been tamed. And I think fear has tamed me. I think I have limiting beliefs that go on in my head. Probably that the enemy, the resistance, our adversary has put in my, helped to creep into my thinking. There's labels. There's labels that people have put on me over my time in ministry. People have put on me that wanted me to do something for them, not in ministry, but just, people in general. And there are also people who want me to buy their products. Let's face it, a lot of what happens in the United States is simply motivated by this one thing, profit.
Yeah.
And profit is not bad. I'm a business owner. I want to continue to own businesses. I want to work with business owners and help them to see that profit is good, but people is probably the more important thing, right? How do you have a business in which you have profit and people, like you're caring about people and their needs, but you also recognize that a business needs to make money. And otherwise it needs to shut down, right? And those sorts of things, but that's tamed us. The way that the advertisements come in, the manipulation of trying to get us to buy something is a taming that we've experienced. And I think us guys need to go through a process. We need to go through a process, and adventure helps facilitate that process of peeling back those layers and recognizing and identifying, was that a fear-based decision? Did I get kind of mesmerized or hypnotized by the world and the thought process because they wanted me to come and buy their product? Where am I at? And we've got to be people, Mark, where we kind of pick our heads up, we wake up and we start to search and see what is the inmost journey that the Lord wants us to take? What is the true adventure, and how do we become the lead characters of our own life stories? And then step into those: clear, courageous, and called. And those are these words that we're throwing around, and it may or may not be the words that they're
great words.
Totally land
that we all want.
But,
right?
But you know, clear, called, courageous, on our paths to purpose. Right?
Yeah.
And people who can, this is the one that gets me, and it may just break me down, right? That can receive love and give love freely. So that's why the untaming seems to resonate, is that I don't think I'm alone in that. No. I may be. And
there's a big tribe of men all over that are in those waters as well. And I think for me, I appreciate you sharing that. I think for me, in this journey that we've been on, I was thinking about the other day, I think we've been on this journey for over 10 years, but
yeah, we have
really in the depths of the trenches in this journey for the last 3 or 4 months. And I think for me, when I think back in my life, and you shared some great examples, when I think back to taking groups of people and then individually myself, when I feel the most alive, when I feel the most intimacy with God and intimacy with my wife and the relationships that matter the most to me in my home and then in my close circle of friends, it's truly at the epicenter, there's adventure. There's this white knuckle moment where I've experienced in the course of at least that last year, maybe even more, where I've truly had a moment where I just feel so alive. There's this inside out kind of light switch that comes on where there's a deeper sense of clarity, there's a deeper sense of purpose, there's a deeper sense of passion. And I've really come back, I used the word just a moment ago, intimacy. I've come back to realize
talk about that a lot.
I do. And I think the guys that are with us right now listening to this, and the guys that are coming into this tribe and coming into this untamed way of life with us. I think at the end of the day, I realized probably about 7 years ago that my marriage wasn't alive like I wanted it to be. Who I was as a dad. I wasn't living out and alive like I wanted to be. I was conformed and stuck in kind of the rhythms of Groundhog Day, doing the same thing over and over again every day. But I just felt lifeless. I just felt like I was just kind of comfortably numb going through just the rhythm of the day. And I came to a place where a surfing trip in Cabo San Lucas, where I literally thought...
This is just recently.
No, there was a recent trip where I thought I almost died on a...
That's a good story too. We can't miss that one.
A pretty good reef break. But I was on a trip in Cabo San Lucas, and I caught this right. So as you drop in, you surf, you can either obviously go right or you can go left. And I'm naturally inclined to be regular footed, so I went right, and that's my strong way to surf. And I caught this wave, and it was like time had stood still, and I actually was able to kind of creep into a barrel. And as I looked through the barrel and saw the beautiful sunlight at the end of it, and I was able to make the barrel. Wasn't a long barrel, but I was able to make it. And I came out of that barrel, and I began for the first time in a long time to have beautiful dialogue with God, and to begin to ask questions like, Lord, why have I lost so much intimacy with you? Why have I lost so much intimacy with my wife? And again, when we think intimacy as men, we think intimacy physical. And most men have their kind of litmus test or their evaluation of intimacy in their marriage. And as long as that physical box is being checked, as often as they want it to be checked or close to the expectations of what they want, then they normally, and myself included, will say, our marriage is, we're intimate. I feel close to my wife. And yet I began to realize in that moment, and then now fast forward, 7 years, that intimacy is me understanding the heart of my wife in her emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Me becoming a PhD student in my wife, in what makes her tick, the way that God's created her, understanding and asking questions as best I could with grace and love about some of her family of origin, her past.
Yeah.
But really asking God, Lord, what would it look like for me in the efforts that I spent on the physical and the fixation of thought that I have on the physical side of intimacy? What would it look like for me, Lord, to begin to kind of shift that energy, to begin to cultivate energy around emotional intimacy, spiritual intimacy, and saying, God, I know that when you bring those things, when I draw near to her heart and I draw near to you, her and I together spiritually, that I'm going to experience a deeper sense of coming alive in my marriage. And then with that as well, I began to process, Lord, how do I worship you with my heart? What does it look like? Because men tend to be so logical.
Yeah.
We want to fix and solve problems. There's nothing wrong with that. And yes, we can love God and we need to love God with our minds, but Lord, how do I love you with my heart?
Yeah.
With my strength, with my soul?
Yep.
What does that look like? And let me really metastasize and chew and digest that over the course of the next 7 years. And in all of that, adventure has played a consistent role that when I don't have adventure, my wife sees it. When I look in the mirror, I see it. And you said this word, and I want you to share a little about it, because I think, and we even joked about this last night, and we had a night with my boy going to a TNT studio here in Atlanta where we are now.
It was so good. Yeah, to see
and
Mark.
They recorded.
Yeah, we went somewhere to watch it because they wouldn't let us in the studio, right? They didn't have enough room.
Right.
So we go to a restaurant.
And we're loud, so they probably don't want us anyways.
We're watching it. And we're just waiting and waiting and waiting. And then all of a sudden, the boys pop up, on the screen. The hockey team is there.
Yeah, right.
And Mark's like, there they are. There they are. There's my boy. There's my boy. Right. And the whole restaurant is like, what the? It was so good.
It was so fun. But through that, you said these words, and we've been really, the people that are with us right now watching this, maybe tomorrow you don't have an opportunity to go surfing. We'd love to take you soon.
Yeah.
Maybe tomorrow you don't have an opportunity to go snowboarding.
Yeah.
Or to go wake surfing. Or
Mountain
to go
biking.
hunting, which I just went duck hunting for the first time. As more of the South
True Southern boy here. Look at that.
penetrates my soul. I love being a redneck to all the rednecks that are out there. But in this process, you might not have a big trip that you can go on tomorrow or maybe even this month. But you said something yesterday, and I think all of us have an opportunity daily, for sure weekly, to do a mini adventure.
Mini adventure,
And it's like, Lord, what is that mini adventure? Because I want to be untamed. I know you want me to be untamed. You want me to have more clarity. You want me to be more courageous. You have a calling in my life.
Right.
And you want me to walk along a path of purpose.
Yeah.
So that's the untaming process that we're in.
Yeah.
But in that process, there's a mini adventure that will be catalytic for you to experience that in a deeper way quickly.
And it's almost like it's a habit that we have to redevelop in our lives. I think as children, at least as boys, I have 3 girls now, and I love them. They're, they bring so much joy to me, but it's also like a foreign culture that I now live in my house, because I grew up with 2 brothers, 3 boys. So basically daily life was an adventure. Then as you look at my expanded family, the Stockton family, this is a boisterous, bold family. I mean, my Uncle Billy, there will be stories upon stories that I get to tell about my Uncle Billy and the way that he actually influenced and shaped my life. My dad, a hunter. But I mean, boys were always trying to go out and have these adventures, so it's kind of natural. But then life goes on, right? The responsibilities pile up. These things, that we pay attention to, we start to define our models of success. Huge issue for us as men, right? Our models of success. What is success? How often do we get fixated on that one thing that has to do with our career as the only way that we view success.
Yeah.
I mean, we have got to untame ourselves from that false belief system, right? That is the only mode of success. Because then if that's what we're looking at, then we're not paying attention to, are we a successful husband?
Yeah.
Are we successful in, generally speaking, our relationships with our sons, our daughters, the people around us? Have we even moved past our own personal circle or influence that is benefiting us, right? To people that don't have any ability to give some sort of benefit to us, but that we should be thinking about giving to. All of that type of stuff.
It's huge. So I'll throw in one thing real quick. Continue that thought. I just want to say that for me, and I think for a lot of guys, we fall into this trap of, and you just mentioned it, what's winning for men,
right?
We pour more effort and time and energy into things that are winning. So if work is winning, we're hitting the KPIs, we're making the sales, we're winning at work. What was happening to me, and I didn't realize until that point at that 7-year mark 7 years ago, is I was winning. Everything in the marketplace, for the most part, I was crushing it. I was winning. And yet what happens is when you're winning and then you come home and you feel like to some degree, I'm not really winning at home right now. So it's easier for me to just go throw on my basketball shorts, put on Sports Center and watch the game and just kind of be in the home, but not active, present, and engaged and leading with love. Not really untamed at home. At work, I was completely untamed, living this courageous, adventurous, passionate life, crushing what I was doing in the marketplace. But at home, I was just more or less a lot of nights a shell, and didn't even know really if I had enough energy to really get untamed at home and to take the steps to say, how do we start winning at home? Because we were doing okay, but we weren't winning. We weren't like crushing it. So,
and I mean, when you start talking about that, so I have 20 years of pastoral interactions with men, right? 20 years. And I know, how many do you have? Is it about
16?
16 years. So this is a common experience for men. And this is not, so those guys that are out there listening to this, not only do you and I have some level of this in our own lives where we have had to fight and recognize what are the areas that I truly want to succeed in, the thoughts of legacy, things like that. But this is super common. Because just like you said, we start to win in a particular area. Well, where are we going to spend time? We're going to spend time in the area where we're winning.
For sure.
And if you're not necessarily winning at home, then you're just kind of like, well, maybe there's nothing I can do about it. And nothing could be more false. Literally nothing could be more false. But that is part of that untaming process, is recognizing, where does my heart beat the loudest? And I'm telling you, I mean, if we really truly think about it, where does our heart beat? Our heart beats for our wives. Our heart beats for those relationships that we care most about, our closest friends. Our heart beats for our children, that we want to see succeed in life. And all of that stuff becomes so important that we recognize and actually put that on some sort of a chart, or identify a way to have some sort of way to identify whether or not we're succeeding in those areas. And it's not necessarily about the outputs that come, it's the inputs that we can put in. Because if we're not doing it, like all of us know, like if I show up at the gym and I do one rep and then walk out of the gym, like, what do you expect, right?
You're not going to be buff.
You're not going to
be yoked Joel, for sure.
But if you put in consistent effort over time, and you do the same thing again and again, then you will see some sort of a result. But we apply that in business, we apply that in the gym. We have a very hard time applying that in our relationships. Why? I don't know. I think it's very simple, that it's a limiting belief. It's these things that have gotten into our mind. Honestly, I believe it's our adversary who wants us to not pay attention to things that are actually going to sustain life the best, which are our closest relationships.
I couldn't agree more. For me, back to that 7-year kind of mini barrel, but a little bit of a barrel surfing moment. When I came home, one of the integrated steps, because a lot of this is asking the Lord as you hear this conversation and you're listening to it. Lord, what is it you're showing me right now as I process this conversation? Then what do you want me to do? Specifically with the information. that you're either illuminating or convicting me or encouraging me or bringing into the kind of epicenter of my soul right now as I hear this. What do you want me to do, God? Because that's really where faith meets action and we start growing.
Yeah.
God told me in that moment, I know you're winning at work. I know there's fruits and there's success at work. Yeah. What would it look like for you, Mark, when you drive home to begin to pray for a few things, to ask God to help you, to give you the energy and the strength, to have the mindset of truth, because this is truth, that the most important part of our days happens when the garage opens and we walk in the door at whatever time that is, 6:30, 7 p.m. That's the most important part of my day. That's the most important part if you're a husband of your day.
That's heavy.
And that's heavy.
That's heavy.
And I began to have a paradigm shift of mind to realize I was so off in that intentionality, so off in that mindset and that effort. And I began to say, God, I'm exhausted. Men are exhausted at that point.
Right.
And we've talked about this, and especially you with a bunch of girls. I know that there's probably 10,000 words that are going to be thrown at me when I come home.
Yeah.
Because I'm left to about 15.
I think it's,
and they have 10,000.
I think it's a 3 laps around the table before I get to say a word, right?
Exactly. But I know in the midst of that, I know that I need your strength.
Yeah.
I know that I need to be active in this moment, present.
Right.
Truly engaged.
Yeah.
And when I am leading, it's with love.
Yeah.
So Lord, if you'll help me is a desire to be a godly husband, is a desire that I have and you have for me to be a godly father.
Yeah.
Help me know this is the most important part of my day.
Yeah. And Mark, so you start to talk about that stuff. And I think this is where either this kind of sense of failure or struggle, because now all of a sudden I'm starting to put a finger on the pain that we experience as men, right? And now this is the last thing we want to do, right? Is just actually engage that in any way. And that's where I think adventure is so key. Because whether it be a little tiny mini adventure, and I got to tell the story about my daughter in just a second, because we went on a mini adventure the other day, and it was profound to me because I thought through the process. I was like, wow, well, look at what happened in 30 minutes. But men need to be getting out of the ordinary. They need to get out of the ordinary and take the time to actually be able to think about what's going on in their lives, because otherwise they're not going to be able to draw conclusions based on some of the stuff that we're saying right now, right? So that's a critical thing, because look at the way a week is going to work, all right? If you're anything like probably the circles that Mark and I run in, et cetera, you're going to go through, you're going to have a somewhat stressful week because there's a lot of things going on. So even if you don't have an extremely stressful job, you have the quantity of things at this stage of life. If you're anywhere near it, if you have kids, if you're married, if you're in a thriving career, you're going to be doing a lot of stuff. So then the weekend comes, or there's a natural break that's built into it, and you come out of that and you're tired. And a lot of guys that I know, they definitely do prioritize the physical, right? Because we've got to make sure that we're sustaining or able to get through the next week, et cetera. And exercise does that. And I really, it does bum me out when I see people who are dragging so hard just because they haven't figured out that element of their life. And that is critical. And we want to help people, guys in that area as well, because that will help all these other areas really, just make it easier, if you would.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to get at is a guy goes through his week, and his week is stressful. Gets to the end of the week and he does his exercise thing, and then there's usually some sort of a sport, or there's some sort of thing, whether it be watching the fishing channel, whatever it is, right? You golf, you get out and you do something that takes you out of the place that you're in, the stress, and it relieves that. And we find that a lot of times it's football, but what also happens is that we're basically on a hamster wheel. We keep going and we do the same thing week in and week out, and we don't pause. We don't make space. And that's what an adventure does. An adventure takes you out of the ordinary. It rewrites the whole narrative of what you should be doing at any time. And then it starts to challenge you with things that you're maybe a little bit uncomfortable with. You and I talk about the importance of getting into uncomfortable situations frequently. Because if all you ever do is sit in a comfortable situation or do what you know, then you kind of get into this I'm in control, this feeling of I'm in control. And you stop looking at what's actually important. So an adventure helps you do that. And we want to do retreats. We're going to be scheduling some retreats, in the upcoming months, where we're going to do adventure retreats that'll take probably about 3 nights and 4 days, and we'll be able to walk through an entire process in that time. But this mini adventure that I went on with my daughter Lily was so funny. Okay. So we were at my youngest daughter Georgia's we were at my youngest daughter Georgia's dance competition in Birmingham, Alabama. And we're walking around, the weather was relatively warm. We're walking around downtown Birmingham. And my daughter Lily is seeing all the skyscrapers, and she goes, Dad, I want to go to the top of one of the tallest buildings. And I'm like, that sounds fun. That's sweet. I'm like, that's cool.
Love it.
Well, how are you going to get up there? And she's kind of, I don't know, trying to figure it out in her mind, how's she going to get up there? She actually goes on Google, takes the initiative, finds a hotel, and she's like, Dad, that's where I want to go. And then I'm like, I feel my discomfort, right? I don't know, you really want to do that? Like, I kind of draw back. I'm like, all right, thinking about how this goes. I've got to sneak past the front desk, or I've got, whatever it is. Like, how are you going to get to the top? Because I'm not going to go be a guest at that hotel.
Right.
I'm thinking, well, what other ways are there to do this, right?
Yeah.
And I couldn't come up with anything. And I don't know why. Why do we do that, right? As soon as we're confronted with something that makes us slightly uncomfortable, we're kind of like, I'd rather not. And that was kind of my posture that I took. Well, Lily, we walked in, she's my oldest. We walked out and we're walking around downtown. She's like, Dad, let's just go for a walk. We walk a little further, and I totally get what she's doing, right? She walks me all the way to there's a tall building. She's like, surprise, here we are. Like now you've got to go on this adventure with me. And so I go, okay, so here's how this is going to go. I don't know what the deal is with this hotel. I've never been in it before in my life. But I do know a thing or two about sneaking around. So I said, don't make eye contact. Just walk, and we're going to find the nearest staircase or the elevators that are out of the sight of the people at the front desk.
Right.
So just act like you own the place. She's like, okay.
She's loving it.
So we walk in, and there's stairs right on the left, and we're just like, walk in, and we turn, and we just start walking up the stairs. We walk up a few floors, go out into the, out into the hallway, find the elevator. And then we're like, okay, I think it was 25 stories, right? So usually they have a key that you got to put in for the 25th floor, right? The penthouse. So we're just like, okay, 25, bing, it lights up and we're off to the races, right? Right up to the top. And we got up there and there's this cool chair. We got all these pictures. And how simple is this, right?
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. Anybody could do this, but Lily had this spirit of adventure that I didn't even know if I actually wanted to go on, because I'm kind of like, well, been there, done that. Is this really necessary for her to do? All these adult things, all these things that we've been tamed with at this stage of our life, Mark.
Right.
But my daughter wanted adventure. I saw that spark in her eye and I'm like, hell yeah, we're doing it, right? So we get in and we go to the top. And then it turns out while we're in there, we see restaurant, or while we're standing out in front of the elevator, that there's a restaurant, while we're standing in front of the elevator, there's a rooftop bar. And we're like...
On the 25th floor.
Nice. On the 25th floor. Nice. Above the 25th floor.
Oh, wow.
Right? So it was one level up because it was rooftop.
Beautiful.
And so I'm like, well, let's do that, right? So we go to the rooftop and then we go out, and sure enough, we got all these pictures because it was open air. There were fire pits up there. It was really incredible. But here's the key. Mm-hmm. In this cycle, everybody goes through something very, very similar. Mm-hmm. You're in the ordinary world, and then you have an invitation or a call.
Yeah.
And you're invited out of the ordinary world into this extraordinary place, somewhere where it's a little uncomfortable, a little less familiar, something you may or may not want to do.
Right.
And we have a tendency, just like I did, to push back. I don't see how it benefits me, right? I've been there, done that. Do you really want to do that? It's a little embarrassing. Yeah. It's very simple. Right. Remember, this whole mini adventure that I went on with Lily was a half an hour total. Mm-hmm. But I said yes. I responded yes to the call. Mm-hmm. And that took courage. I had to have clarity. Where are we going? Okay, if that's the goal, then we'll do it, Lily. And I said yes. It stoked the courage in me.
Yeah.
The courage came up. I said, let me tell you how to do this. I've got experience in these things. I go back into that kind of like that inner person, that little boy, that I've always wanted to be, that adventuresome person. And we went for it. And so I crossed these thresholds, right, of adventure, and I put myself in a vulnerable situation with my daughter where we could fail. And we did it, but then when we succeeded, the whole feeling was different. I mean, there's actually a life change. And now I got to pass that to my daughter because she went on an adventure that she'd never experienced. I've been in high buildings before, right? And she's been in high buildings, but never with that, I did this, like I made a decision, I went up. It's so simple, but she came out of there, and this is what's so key. She came out of there a changed person. She did something, and she succeeded at something, and went on that adventure, and she'll quite literally never be the same. It's small, talking about something very small, but this is what we need to go on and do on a regular basis as men to continue to untame ourselves. Because otherwise, we're just going to do the same thing that we did yesterday, the same thing that we did last week, the same thing that we did the year before. And look at the routine. And routine's not bad. I am all for routine because routine creates stability. Routine, honestly, builds a foundation that we can propel forward from. It helps our kids. Kids need stability and routine in order to thrive and to grow cognitively, spiritually, the whole deal. We need disciplines in our life. And you and I will spend a lot of time talking about those disciplines. But we also need that key element of waking up, getting out of the ordinary, reevaluating things, and deciding this is who I am, recognizing this is who I am. This is my path to purpose. This is the path that I need to be on, and making sure that we don't just let that fall away as the years go by and the routines get embedded. But we continue to say, no, I need to be untamed. I need to live out the true man that is inside of me.
Yeah. Well, I love that story. And I think also the last thing I would say is when you think about your oldest, Lily will probably never forget that moment.
Right.
You're sharing it, so obviously it's going to be embedded into your mind and you'll never forget it. But you also think about the closeness and the intimacy that you experience with your daughter in that moment. Yeah. So God, in that ability to have that mini adventure, also ushered in a sense of beautiful connection and closeness with your daughter.
No doubt.
And I think at the end of the day as well, and I'll bring this back to marriage, but this applies to more than just marriage. Yeah. I've talked about a couple ways that I think as men, to be untamed, we have to really put effort, intentionality into growing in the ways that we say, God, help me be more emotionally connected to my wife.
Yeah. For sure.
Help me be more spiritually connected to my wife. But I'm going to throw a third form of intimacy that really is the epicenter and the heart of what you just shared. And that's experiential intimacy. So to ask ourselves as husbands, and this can be done with our kids as well, but you just shared a moment with your daughter. So I'll lean it into a conversation with our wives. So as you're listening in and hearing this conversation right now, and I just recently had this even just last week. I have an anniversary that's coming up on Saturday, actually. So my wife and I will be married 22 years on Saturday. Thank you. So February 8th is that day, and we're recording this just a few days before this. And was talking to my mom when my dad passed away 6 years ago, just last week. I promised God when my dad went to be with the Lord in heaven, where he is now, Monday through Friday, I'm going to call my mom every day. And I'm going to my dad passed that mantle to me to make sure that I continually am the son that is, to some degree, the man in her life that will make sure that everything that I can do, she's protected, she's cared for, and I have that kind of check-in with mom. Yeah. So my mom was asking me just this week, a couple of days ago, she said, what are you doing for the anniversary? It's coming up, I know, on the 8th. What are you doing? And I said, I don't know, we'll kind of just do something in the restaurants that we have around here, restaurants that we've already been to. Yeah. And she said, why would you not experience something new for the anniversary? Why would you not experience a new moment with her in a new city where you are the last 6 months? There's a ton of new opportunities, I'm sure, in the area you live now. And it was a really good challenge because I think it's so easy to do what's comfortable. It's so easy to do what is in the rhythm of our week. And even when it comes to a date night, or even when it comes to, I've got an opportunity to surprise my wife and we're going to go experience something new together. And it doesn't have to be a restaurant. It can be experience God's creation and go to a lake. and have a beautiful opportunity to go take out food.
Yeah.
And sit and look at something that's new, to experience a dance class together, to experience cooking classes together, to experience a trip together, a mini adventure together, to make sure that we're experientially connecting with our wives and we're experiencing moments with them. That what God does in that is that the goal of marriage is oneness.
Mm-hmm.
There's a connection, a deeper connection of oneness that happens that allows us to be more untamed, allows us to be more alive with our beautiful wives in this connection, this oneness that happens.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we know, every marriage, mine included, there's this resisting the drift that happens every single day. And what happened 7 years ago is I realized there was a pretty large drift.
Yeah.
Where my wife and I really weren't as close and connected as I know we needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And the natural conforming patterns to the world, the taming patterns of the world, will push you and your wife apart.
Yeah.
We have to untame that and create new patterns.
Right.
Courageous patterns.
Yeah.
That say, how do I press in to gain closeness and come back closer to her?
Yeah.
And that might be obviously the course of seasons and maybe even years if you're really far to come back together.
Mm-hmm.
But over the course of that intentionality, I'm trying to get better at. I'm definitely a work in progress, but I'm trying to get better at experiencing even these mini adventures with my wife, to experience things with her. We're both seeing something for the first time.
Right.
We're both tasting something for the first time.
Yeah.
We're both engaging in something for the first time. And there's an untaming coming alive process that happens.
Right.
That really solidifies that oneness and that bond of two becoming one, which is what God does in marriage. So
it's something that is so critical as I hear you talk. You were saying the things that had to happen first before you got to that place. And those things that have to happen first is that you have to wake up. You have to, you said alive, becoming alive, aware. So there's some sort of awakening or awareness that has to happen.
Yeah.
And that's why we talk so much about adventure, because of how it allows our hearts to come alive. And adventure looks different for a lot of different people, but you know, it could be as simple as in a downtown, going up a hotel, doing something that's, you know, uncomfortable.
Right.
Or like we've done an adventure retreat before, we took guys to California and we got them a surf instructor and they never surfed before. And it's always so fun to watch. And it was really cool for us too, because they got the surf instructor and then we went out with the guys that knew how to surf. And there were some good waves that day. I remember, you know,
was good waves
and so it was really fun. But
Palm Patrol went a couple times.
And they learned something new. But what was really funny about the whole process is that they actually got pummeled the first day on this shore break, and they all came in and they're like beat up, and they thought
some wanted to give up even.
They're like, we're not going tomorrow. And I'm like, what do you mean you're not going tomorrow? Right. No, you're going. And so I'm like, so then the next day comes and a few of them actually said, we're just going to go to lunch at this cool restaurant that we want to go to. And I'm like, no way.
You're choosing comfort.
You have, exactly. But see how we do that, you know? And so what was so cool is that then the surf instructor took them to a much more calm wave. Yeah. And they all got up. So after they had the instruction the first day, the second day,
pounded.
Everybody stood up. Yeah. And then they had the story to tell. But that's what happens with us, right? We have to awaken to something new, and we have to recognize, even if it's a coach or a guide or a mentor who's telling you this is important, this is where you need to get to, that's where you need to go. But we have to experience that awakening. And then that adventure awakened their hearts. And you remember the conversations that we had in the evenings, you know, then you add good food, maybe a little beer to it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just this
cigar or two.
Yeah. It's just this time where, I mean, I don't think any of those guys will forget that time. And I know I won't.
Yeah, I won't.
But adventure opens your heart. And so it's that awakening. It's that process of awakening. And since we talk so much about water, there's this illustration that always goes through my mind. When I was 18 years old, I went to kind of this school in the big island of Hawaii. And the Kona coast has all this lava that has been built up with some of the most amazing reef that you've ever seen. And there's kind of a shelf. And we would go spearfishing all the time. We would go out there snorkeling, spearfishing and everything. You go on the shelf and it's about 30 feet deep, maybe 20, 30 feet deep. And then it would drop into the deep blue sea. super intimidating, awe-inspiring, all of those feelings, right?
For sure.
But I remember I'd go snorkeling, so I'd go snorkeling, and I would get in the water, and where's my face? My face is down in the water, and I'm swimming around, looking at all the fish, and diving down and doing this, and it's easy to honestly get captivated and just be down doing that for hours. Well, I remember when I finally surfaced and took a moment to look and see the stationary shore and assess how far I had drifted. It's amazing how far you can go without having any idea because of the currents of the ocean. Yeah. What an illustration of the taming that we go through, the currents of whatever it is, however we've got caught up in those currents. But if we don't take a moment to actually pick our head out of the water, which is flowing, ebbing and flowing with the tide, the currents, if we don't pop our head out, we don't know where we're at in relation to the shore. And I was way far off. It wasn't a dangerous situation. It was a calm day. But if it was not a calm day, if I was in a turbulent moment in my life or in that ocean, you can see the metaphor colliding with our real lives there. Yeah. Then we can get far away from where we were, which makes it critical that we take a moment to pick our head up, reorient ourselves, and then decide, where do we need to be? Do I need to get back to the shore and walk back because it's easier? Or do I need to start swimming into the current because I need to get back to where I was?
Yeah, it's such a great illustration. And I think we all are in this process of doing that. And I think one of the things that I tell myself daily to do, and I tell guys in this process of, how do you wake up? What does that awakening process look like? And I think if there's at all a possibility for the people right now that are with us in this untaming adventure, to go on a mini adventure or to go on an adventure with us soon. Right. But even before you come with us, to be able to say, what's something as a mini adventure that I could do in the next 2 weeks?
Yeah.
And then process that, because what I feel like happens is that when a man is holding something in his hand, not a coffee cup, but he's holding something in his hand.
Even though it has a seal on it.
Even though there is a cool otter or seal on it. But when he's holding something in his hand, okay? Could be a gun.
Right.
Could be a surfboard. Could be the poles that you're skiing with.
Yeah.
Whatever it might be. There's this kind of white knuckle coming alive awakening moment that in that moment begin, as you and I do often, begin to hold up a mirror in front of yourself and begin to ask questions like this. Do I feel like I'm living the life of purpose that I want to live right now?
Right.
Do I feel like I truly am living a courageous life? Do I have clarity in my life right now?
Clarity's so big.
And I think you start with that. And I think it is so big. And I think you begin to have these conversations with your creator.
Yeah.
You begin to talk to God. If you're with others that you trust in that moment, other men, you can collectively have this conversation around a campfire or around a meal that night.
Yep.
But go do some adventure that allows a new surrounding and a new adventure to open up your heart and open up your eyes to have this awakening and begin to ask yourself some of the legacy questions, some of the questions of clarity, some of the questions of courage and purpose. And now what I do daily, now that I've had that 7 year ago and then many other adventure moments in between the last 7 years, I really ask myself, God, even though I'm not looking in the mirror, ask this question, Lord, I want you to hold up a mirror in front of me. And I want to begin to kind of process with you right now. Do I feel like I really am alive right now in this season? Right. Do I feel like I really have clarity right now in this season? Am I courageous like you want me to be courageous?
Yeah.
What do my kids see? What does my wife see? What do the neighbors, what do people in the marketplace see? Do I feel like I'm walking some type of path of purpose? And again, you and I, Joel, we're here to help people navigate that journey. That's why we're here.
I mean,
there's
we're dying
so many
to.
steps. Yeah, there's so many steps.
We just know that there's so many people out there that need the help. So, but there's so many steps. You're saying
there's just so many steps to be able to take. But I tell people all the time, get 1% better. Take one step, one baby step forward. You don't have to have it all. None of us, you and I included. You just got to define reality, know where you are currently in that mini adventure, and then from there, begin to kind of dream about the path.
Right.
Where do you want to be? Begin to dream and articulate and write down where you want to be. And you might even just have maybe one thought that you have in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay.
Yeah.
And then ask yourself in integration, how do I just take one step? Lord, what is the best first step forward?
Yeah.
I don't even need to know all the steps.
Yeah.
But just give me the first few steps forward. And I feel like for me and for a lot of men, that maybe is the hardest question.
Right.
Is what is the first step for me to take?
Mm-hmm.
The dream might be clear. The reality might be clear. But the path and what first steps to take might be a little fuzzy.
Yeah.
And again, that's okay. Just begin to kind of wrestle with God and ask him, God, what are you showing me in this right now? And what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
And I promise the men that are out there, myself included, just when I moved to Atlanta, I really started because I moved to Atlanta and I was like, what am I doing here? My best friend is my dog. I didn't even know you were in Huntsville, Alabama. I'm like, I am a complete loser. And I know I'm here to support my wife and this beautiful journey that she has. And the kids seem to kind of be excited about it. But what the snikes am I doing here? Like, what am I doing here? So I've had to really get good at these two questions.
Right.
God, what are you showing me right now?
Yeah.
And what do you want me to do?
But
and just listen to that.
This is what can be so powerful about the physicality of the whole thing, right? When you put yourself in a particular environment, it can actually help and assist you to answer the questions that or even ask the questions that you're talking about right now, right? So when you put yourself, like I'm thinking of, if you go out and just do something that you've never done before, go to a rock climbing gym, right? And you go to the rock climbing gym, I've never done this before. What's it feel like? It looks easy. Anybody can climb a wall, right? It's basic human nature, just climb up. Yeah. But you get in there and they start teaching you. What you're doing is you're putting yourself in a learning posture. Mm-hmm. You are putting yourself in a place where you are acknowledging that you don't know everything. But what we always try and do is put ourselves in situations where we can control. Yeah. So then when you put yourself in a situation that you don't control, like you end up in Atlanta, you start asking all sorts of questions like, who am I? Right. What am I doing? Where are my friends? You know,
I have no friends.
What's happening?
It's true.
And so when you start doing that, that's not a bad place to be. It's actually a bad place if you're so tamed that you're completely unaware that there's any question that you need to be asking any longer. But if you put yourself in a different physical environment, it forces you to actually open up and be a learner again. And then you can start to ask those questions. And many guys, myself included, we have a hard time kind of reconciling our inner person with our outer person. Right. And so, a lot of people call that like the mask or, anyways, a lot of people call it like a mask that you wear for society, et cetera. But the inner person is really a different person. But what we want to be is reconciled people, right? We want to reconcile the outer with the inner, but that requires that we go on the inner journey as well as the outer journey. Yes. But it's so cool how that outer journey, the physicality of something, can stoke and invite you to go on that inner journey and start asking those questions and get connected with your inner person, even though it's difficult.
Yeah. And I think that's the most, in my experience, possibly the most neglected part of the man is the inner part of the man.
Right.
Because he hasn't had enough opportunity in the adventure to engage the inner man. Yeah. To see the inner man come alive.
Right.
And to be able to have the right questions. Yeah. Simple questions. But the right questions to be able to process. Yeah. Where are my emotions right now? What are my dreams right now? Maybe they've begun a process of slowly dying, even dreaming. Yeah. Where do I want to be in 5 years? Yeah. Like they just have kind of pushed down all of these dreams and all of these inner thoughts for so many years that, again, I always reference because it's such a great movie and Bill Murray's hilarious, but they live in a place of the late 1980 Bill Murray movie, Groundhog Day. Every day is exactly like yesterday. Right. Except now it's Tuesday, so it's Taco Tuesday. Yeah. But everything else feels identical for the most part. Yeah. Like, I have sex with my wife on this day, and my kids go to school on that day, and they go to cheer and dance and hockey and football on these days. Yeah. And I go to bed exactly at 10:35 each night. Like, there's and habits are great. Yeah. And forming consistent habits
Right.
and rhythms in our home is very important.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if the habit and the formation of the pattern in your home
Yeah.
is the exact same every single day, and you haven't allowed adventure, you
Yeah.
haven't allowed dreams to infiltrate that, you haven't allowed purpose to come into that,
Yeah.
then you're dying.
Right.
You're dying inside.
And I think guys need to hear too that like a lot of this isn't their fault, right? This is something, and that's why we like that name, Untamed. So there is a strategic, there is a strategic thought process behind the taming of an individual.
Yeah.
If you don't even look past just simple businesses who want to get people to buy their stuff, and then you go on in these huge tech companies now that influence so much in the way of communication, they want you kind of asleep and doing what they want you to do. So this is not necessarily somebody's fault. It's what we do is the current goes in that direction, and what we do is we stop swimming counter current, or we stop paying attention.
That's it.
And that's what we need to do is re-engage, and that requires us asking questions. But one of the things that guys are going to feel is they're going to feel like, well, I don't know what questions to ask. That's fine, because that's what we've been thinking about.
Yeah.
That's ultimately
We're here
what
to help
we're
with
talking
that.
about right now.
Yes.
Because when we look back on these stories of adventure and how you and I share this theme in our lives, or we think that every guy needs to go on a mini adventure and an adventure retreat and then an extended adventure, so that then they realize they're the lead character of their own life adventure day in and day out, and they're clear, they're called, and they're courageously walking that path of purpose. I mean, if you think about that, in order to get to that place, they need help to get there. And that's what we want to do.
Yeah.
You and I have made a decision. I mean, I know I made a decision that I'm going to put down the other stuff, even the stuff that is sustaining my family.
Money on the table, even.
Money on the table. I'm leaving money on the table because I have got to head in this direction. I had the most crystal clear feeling of calling return to me a few weeks ago. Let me say that again. I had the most crystal clear sense of calling return to me. And I say return to me because I've had it for more than a decade. And part of me, Mark, wonders if I put it down and I wasn't supposed to. But I have felt strongly for so long that I'm supposed to walk with people and helping illuminate things through adventures. And then when I felt that, I thought there were two big things that hit me. I said, I've got to allow my kids to see me step out into the unknown with clarity and courage. And I am clear on this. I would spend the rest of my life meeting with men, spending time coaching men, leading men, helping them to answer these questions, to taking them on adventures that they have not been on, in order that their hearts can open up, that they can get in tune with themselves, that they can be successful in their businesses, successful in their marriages, successful in life, and become the leading man in their own story. Like, I light up. I mean, I just light up, and I haven't lit up like that in 4 years. And when I felt that, I said, I need to allow my kids to see that side of me, because they haven't seen enough of that lately. And then when I combine that with this thought of a friend of mine that I cared about so much, a very, very successful individual, and I'll call him Dr. B. Dr. B, we were walking a path together, and it was really kind of a cool path, and he had a tremendous vision. He wanted to see clinics helping kids around the entire world, like next level vision that you and I might struggle to think of achieving in our own lives, or I'd say the average person is just never even going to sit down and think, I can be a person that builds clinics around the world. I just loved him. He's a guy with a sense of adventure, incredible guy, and I don't know how to say it any other way, but he gave up on his journey. And it broke my heart. It broke my heart. But as I sat there a few weeks ago, I thought this: there's another Dr. B out there. There is somebody called to pick up that vision and carry it forward. And if I sit here and do nothing, they're going to keep drifting through life. They're going to continue to be tamed. But if I step out and I say something and I truly follow the call of my heart, then I will have the opportunity to interact with that man or those men that have that same calling and are going to pick up where he left off. That's where my heart beats. because I know those men are out there, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
They just need a little encouragement. They just need a little awakening. They just need a short adventure to get their mind back on the areas of success that are truly going to benefit them and leave a legacy behind.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that story, and I know how much that relationship has meant to you.
Yeah.
And yet, in the midst of the tragedy, God has used that relationship to catapult you and push you in a beautiful direction of being right here for such a time as this.
That's the truth.
To start this. And I think for me, I've had moments recently where I'm coming back from a hunting trip. There's a guy that I just met as I just jumped into a group of guys, not knowing many guys, but a couple guys, and 5 of us are doing life together. We're meeting every couple weeks at a restaurant, different restaurants here in Atlanta. And I convinced this guy, Keith, to come with me to go duck hunting.
Yeah.
I don't own a shotgun. He's got a truck. I've got a Tesla, which I'm getting a truck, but I've got a Tesla. I've got to go
it's
get...
mandatory, right? You moved into the South, he's got to trade in his Tesla for a truck.
I've got to get waders from Amazon. Bass Pro Shop is my thing. I already love Bass Pro Shop, but I get all the camouflage hat, camouflage shirt, camouflage, you name it. I'm camoed out. And we're in the car driving up to go duck hunting on Friday. Just a few weeks ago. And he begins to unpack where his marriage is at. And he begins to unpack in a way that I could connect and also relate with him because I've been there.
Yeah.
That it had been longer than he wants to remember the last time he truly felt intimate and close to his wife.
Yeah.
And he's making so much in the marketplace financially. He's doing so well in the area of where he's working. And yet at the end of the day, he feels lifeless. At the end of the day, he doesn't know right now how much purpose he really has.
Yeah.
He's missing clarity and calling in his life. And I began to just grieve and hear his heart. And we began to even have conversations around throwing out the D word, divorce, and how unengaged and unattached he's been to his wife for so long. And I began to a similar place of view, say, God, I've been in a similar place with my wife. Lord, what does it look like for me to be used by you to help men be so untamed and so alive that they experience intimacy with you, God, like they've never experienced? And then the beautiful fruit that provides, not only with God, but also with their wives. Because as we are intimate with God, as we experience closeness and this deep connection where we feel like we know that God is leading us, we feel like God is prompting us, and there's pieces in our life where the Word of God is coming alive, where prayers feel like they're vibrant again, where we worship and we weep before the Lord, where we go out and we walk in nature and we begin to feel God's presence and His closeness to us. And then that translates into us feeling for the first time intimacy, emotional, spiritual, experiential, intellectual intimacy with our wives. I shared a few things, and I didn't really even know how much he was listening because he's driving and we're just men, and we're also weaving in conversations. How many duck are you going to shoot? And what kind of ammo do we have? And how ridiculous our waiters are? And where are we going to eat at Buc-ee's? And hot food on the way there and all this stuff. But then he shared with me just a few days ago when we reconnected at our men's group. And he said, Mark, he said, what you shared, these pieces that you shared, I haven't felt this close to my wife in longer than I remember.
Wow.
My wife initiated sex. My wife initiated sex. And it was amazing. Blow my mind, amazing sex. And I thought, God, there's men out there, because I've been there. There's men out there like that that are in a similar place,
Yeah.
that haven't experienced intimacy with their wives like they want to experience, that God wants for your marriage, and they haven't experienced the closeness and intimacy with God in a long, long time.
Yeah.
And I thought, and I'll bring it back at the end to say, I've seen a couple times here in Atlanta, and you keep mentioning the drift of the river or the drift of the current of the sea. My son and I just recently, and the Chattanooga River runs all through this area that we are right now recording this podcast. But when you think of the current right now in your head of a river, and you think when that river is teeming with life, and the snow has melted and it's at its high point in the spring, even now in the wintertime, my son and I have ventured a few times to see the Chattanooga River. And it's moving. The current is moving. And the reality is that God wants us, and he's calling us in this untamed process to swim upstream of that current. And yet it requires intentionality. It requires a tremendous amount of effort. It requires moments like I shared earlier where I'm praying on the way home from being exhausted coming home. God, give me the energy to know this is the most important part of my day when I walk in the door at 6:30 at night. That's swimming upstream. It takes those type of moments to put the work into it, to swim upstream. But that's the untamed life, because the conforming, taming patterns of this world, media, culture, the things that are around us, will tame us to realize, just like you realized in that moment in Hawaii, I believe you said, how far have we come to get so far off the path that God wants us to be on. But wherever you are and wherever you want to be, there is a beautiful process to begin to turn and to begin to swim upstream. And there's people in this tribe with you, Joel and I. There's people with us in our Facebook groups, people with us in the people that we're already in the process of pouring into and coaching. We are in this together. We are supporting each other. We are a tribe together. We will do life with other men together to be able to swim upstream. And that really excites me.
And being caught in that current, you know, there's a name for that. And nobody wants to have this name.
What is that name?
Mediocre. Mediocre.
Yes.
It's mediocrity.
Nobody wants that.
Nobody. There's just nobody.
Like the plague. Nobody wants
You got it. And yet we get caught in the drift. We get caught in the current and we just drift along. And other people are setting the path for our lives. Other forces. The adversary is getting rhythms inside of our head, scripts that we tell ourselves every single day that are limiting to us, stopping us from becoming the people that the Lord wants us to be. Right? Mediocre. But it's not what we're called to.
It's not.
We're called to be untamed, clear, called, courageous, on our paths of purpose, able to receive love and to give love freely.
I am so excited for these men that are with us to join us in this adventure. And will you join us in this adventure? That's how I want to finish this time together.
Question,
Join us in this adventure.
You got it.
We'll give you steps to join us, but just commit to joining us in this adventure. Because it will change your life. When you become untamed.
We are absolutely preparing things. We're preparing materials like questions to help you and guides in order that you can go on a little mini adventure. We have a Facebook group that we've started.
We're coaching people.
You got it. We definitely have coaching available. I mean, there's just all sorts that we're working on, books. So we're launching into this. I mean, full bore. This is the path that we're on. We're very excited about it. And so now these are these first steps to join in. We'd love to, why don't you just comment? You know, people can just comment and say, I'm ready for an adventure retreat, right? Because we'd love to fill up some retreats, but we haven't started to plan the first one. So if you want to be on the first one, let us know, because that'll get us there that much quicker. We're going to pick some places. We know we'll do something eventually on the West Coast this year or next year. We know we'll do something in the Southeast. I have connections in Italy. I can't wait to take people to the Adriatic Sea. I mean, if they're going to go bike riding with me, let's go cycling, let's go mountain biking. Let's go spear fishing.
Yep.
Let's go to these places that are going to open up our hearts and let us be. Cliff jumping. I have pictures, like of me cliff jumping at a place called the Cave of Poetry.
Free diving.
Surfing. Let's do it, right?
Hunting.
So let us know if you're interested now. You'll get us there faster if you tell us. So, but we want to help in the little steps now, the mini adventures that you can do at home. We want to get you started as soon as you're ready to pick your head up out of that water. Figure out where you're at, start to assess and allow your heart to be open to understand your true man, internal person, the essence of who you are. Get on that path of purpose.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining us in this first conversation that we get to have in the Untamed podcast.
Yep.
Continue to join us and live out your adventure, your mini adventure.
Yeah.
And let's go.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right.